Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive
Ooh, a deep dive.
into something that might sound a little technical at first glance.
Okay.
Mismarking fraud.
Yeah.
But
It's a good one, though.
hold on, this isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet.
Right.
This stuff has real-world consequences.
Absolutely.
Impacting everything from your investments
Yes.
to the price of gas.
Uh-huh.
Even that designer bag you snagged online.
Ooh, yes, definitely.
So,
We've got a stack of sources here.
okay,
Legal definitions, case studies, the works.
nice.
By the time we're done, you'll be able to spot mismarking a mile away.
A mile away.
You'll understand why it happens
Right.
and what's truly at stake.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you give us a clear definition?
Sure.
What exactly is mismarking fraud?
In the simplest terms, it's lying about the value of something to deceive others.
Okay,
It's that intent to deceive that makes it fraud.
gotcha.
Think about someone trying to sell a beat-up car as a pristine classic. They're misrepresenting its value to make a profit.
So it's like putting
Yeah.
a fake price tag on something and hoping no one notices.
Precisely.
Okay.
And this can happen in all sorts of markets, stocks, real estate, commodities, you name it.
Wow.
It can involve anything from fudging numbers on financial statements
Like,
to using counterfeit labels on consumer goods.
all right, so it's not just about used cars then.
No, not at all.
What are some of the most common ways that this mismarking thing actually plays out?
Well, let's take securities mismarking.
Okay.
Imagine a company holding stocks that have plummeted in value.
Okay.
Instead of reflecting this loss on their books, they use something called mark-to-market accounting to pretend those stocks are still worth a fortune.
So it's like putting a fake price tag on a dented can of beans
Mhm.
and hoping no one notices.
Exactly.
Oh.
They're essentially trying to manipulate their financial picture to deceive investors and lenders.
That seems incredibly risky.
It is.
Aren't there rules against this?
Absolutely. There are laws in place to prevent and punish mismarking,
Okay.
but like any type of fraud, it often comes down to intent.
Right.
Proving that someone deliberately misrepresented the value of something to deceive others
Right.
can be challenging.
I can see how that would be tricky.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got securities. What other areas are particularly susceptible to this type of fraud?
Real estate is a big one.
Real estate.
Think about inflated property values during the housing bubble.
Okay, yeah.
Some appraisals were deliberately inflated to justify giving out larger mortgages,
Oh, wow.
ultimately contributing to the 2008 crisis.
So it's not just about individual greed,
Right.
but sometimes a symptom of a much bigger problem
Yes,
within an organization or even an entire industry.
precisely. And the consequences can be devastating, not just for those directly involved, but for the economy as a whole.
Wow. Okay, so we've got securities and real estate.
Yeah.
What about everyday consumer goods? How does mismarking play out there?
Think about counterfeit goods.
Oh.
You might think you're getting a great deal on a designer handbag or a name brand watch,
Right.
but it turns out to be a cheap knockoff misrepresented as the real thing.
Yeah.
Or even worse, imagine buying medication online.
Oh, no.
That turns out to be fake. That could have serious health consequences.
That's a scary thought.
It is.
It seems like mismarking can truly hit close to home.
It absolutely can. And that's why it's so important to understand how it works and to be aware of the potential red flags.
All right, so we've covered a few examples, securities, real estate, consumer goods.
Mhm.
But I'm curious what drives people to engage in this type of fraud in the first place. Is it always about greed?
Greed is definitely a factor, but it's not always the whole story.
Okay.
Sometimes it's about pressure.
Pressure.
Pressure to meet unrealistic targets, to keep up with the competition, or even just to keep your job.
Right.
In those situations, people might feel like they have no choice but to cut corners, even if it means breaking the law.
So it's not just about individual bad actors, but sometimes a symptom of a toxic work environment or a system that rewards results at any cost.
Exactly. And understanding those underlying factors is crucial to addressing the problem effectively.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just punish individuals.
Right.
We need to look at the systemic issues that contribute to this type of behavior.
That makes sense.
I'm
So we've talked about what mismarking is, where it happens, and some of the motivations behind it. But to really grasp the gravity of this, let's delve into a specific case,
Okay.
something that illustrates the mechanics of mismarking and its potential consequences.
Okay.
What about Enron?
Let's talk about Enron.
Remember that massive corporate collapse back in 2001?
Yes, definitely.
Vaguely. I was still
Yeah.
in high school then.
Okay.
Refresh my memory. What made Enron such a textbook case of mismarking fraud?
Well, Enron was a giant
Okay.
in the energy trading world.
Right.
They built this complex web of shell companies
Oh, yeah.
and used them to hide billions of dollars in debt.
Shell companies, that sounds
Oh.
shady already.
It-
How did they use those to mismark their assets?
Well, these shell companies weren't actually doing any real business.
Oh, wow.
They were just a way for Enron to shift their bad debts off their balance sheets.
Okay.
By doing this, they made their financial statements look much healthier than they actually were.
Gotcha.
It's a classic example of using complex financial structures to obscure the true value of assets.
So it's not just about changing a few numbers on a spreadsheet.
Right.
It can involve creating these elaborate schemes
It does.
to deceive investors and regulators.
Exactly. And Enron's executives were masters at this.
Really?
They used accounting loopholes and aggressive mark-to-market valuations to inflate their earnings and hide their losses.
Wow.
It was a house of cards built on deception.
But how did they get away with it for so long? Surely someone must have noticed something was wrong.
Well, that's the thing about mismarking.
Oh, yeah.
It can be very difficult to detect,
Yeah.
especially when it's done on a large scale
Right.
and involves complex financial instruments.
Right.
Enron had a team of highly skilled accountants and lawyers
Of course.
who were experts at manipulating the system.
So it's a bit like a high-stakes game of hide and seek.
In a way, yes. And in this case, the consequences were devastating.
Yeah.
When Enron's fraud was eventually exposed, the company collapsed,
Wow.
costing investors billions of dollars and sending shockwaves through the financial markets.
So Enron is a cautionary tale about the dangers of mismarking and the importance of transparency and accountability in financial reporting.
Absolutely. The Enron scandal led to significant reforms in corporate governance and accounting practices.
Okay.
The Sarbanes-Oxley Act, passed in 2002,
Right.
was a direct response to Enron and other high-profile cases of corporate fraud.
Yeah.
It aimed to strengthen auditing standards and increase corporate responsibility.
So it's not just about punishing wrongdoers,
Right.
but about fixing the system itself
Yeah.
to make this kind of fraud less likely.
Precisely, we need strong regulatory frameworks, robust enforcement mechanisms, and independent audits to deter mismarking and hold those who engage in it accountable.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. But let's be realistic for everyday people.
Yeah.
How can we actually spot mismarking?
Yeah.
It's not like we have teams of forensic accountants on call.
That's a great point. You don't need to be a financial expert to protect yourself.
Okay.
A lot of it comes down to common sense and a healthy dose of skepticism.
Okay. I like where this is going.
Yeah.
Give us some practical tips. What should we be looking out for?
First, be wary of anything that seems too good to be true.
Yeah.
If an investment promises unusually high returns with little or no risk, that's a red flag.
Gotcha.
Do your research, read independent reviews, and compare offers from different sources.
So trust your gut, but also do your homework.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Okay.
If you're considering an investment, ask for a detailed breakdown of the fees and risks involved.
Right.
If you're buying a property, get an independent appraisal. If something feels off, don't be pressured into making a decision.
Those are some great practical tips. But what if we suspect that something shady is going on?
Uh-huh.
What can we actually do about it? I mean, it's not like we can single-handedly take down a giant corporation like Enron.
You're right. Taking on a massive corporation might be a David and Goliath situation.
Yeah.
But remember, even small actions can make a difference.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What kind of actions are we talking about?
First off, document everything.
Okay.
Gather any evidence you have.
Okay.
Emails, contracts, suspicious marketing materials.
Okay.
Anything that supports your suspicions.
So gather evidence.
Yeah. Then what?
Then consider reporting it
Okay.
to the appropriate
To
authority.
the authority.
Yeah, depending on the situation.
Right.
This could be a regulatory body like the SEC
Okay.
for securities fraud,
Mm-hmm.
or a consumer protection agency
Right.
for counterfeit goods.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that be like
Yeah.
reporting a pothole?
Do those reports actually lead to anything?
You'd be surprised.
Okay.
While not every report results in a full-blown investigation,
Right.
they
Yeah.
all contribute to a bigger picture.
Okay.
Regulators use these reports to identify patterns, track trends, and allocate resources.
So our little reports can actually help them connect the dots
Yeah,
and potentially prevent bigger problems down the road.
exactly.
Yeah.
Think of it like this.
Okay.
You might be one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Okay.
Your report could be the missing piece
Right.
that helps authorities uncover a major fraud.
Okay, that's actually pretty empowering.
It is.
Reporting feels less like tattling.
Right.
And more like doing our part to protect others.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And remember, speaking up can also protect you.
Oh, right.
If you've been a victim of mismarking,
Right.
reporting it can help you recover losses or prevent further harm.
It's not just about being a good Samaritan. It's about self-protection, too.
Exactly.
This has been a truly eye-opening conversation.
I agree.
We've covered a lot of ground,
Yeah, we have.
from what mismarking is and why it happens, to how we can spot it,
Yeah,
and what to do if we suspect foul play.
it's been great.
Any final thoughts for our listeners today?
I think the biggest takeaway here
Okay.
is that we all have a role to play in combating this type of fraud.
Right.
It starts with being informed, being vigilant, and asking the right questions.
So knowledge is power.
Yes.
Skepticism is our friend.
Absolutely.
And speaking up can make a real difference.
It can.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you for having me.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of mismarking fraud.
It's been a pleasure.
Remember, stay informed, stay skeptical,
Oh.
and stay safe out there until next time.